So I wanted to highlight this excellent and concise video by a lady called Athena on the state of immigration and multiculturalism in the Western world at the moment. Let's take a look.
There's nothing irrational about fearing a culture that does not respect or tolerate Western civilization. I hear so many leftists throw around Islamophobia. That's a made-up term, okay? There's nothing irrational. An irrational fear is the definition of phobia. There's nothing irrational about seeing Islam and its culture and its values and its beliefs and its behaviors and saying, this is a problem. I'm scared of this. Islam is not just a religion. It is a lifestyle. And their main goal is to eradicate Western civilization. And Democrats are letting it happen all over the planet. Look at the UK, for example. In the year 2000, in England and Wales, 7,000 reported rapes. In the year 2024, 71,000. And those are just the ones that are reported. What changed in that time? Oh, I wonder. That is an 800% increase. And y'all don't see that as a problem. Women are scared to walk the streets of the UK right now. And you won't listen to them when they talk about it. You call them racist. It's the truth. They're afraid because these men do not respect women. It's in their culture. Islam doesn't even see grape as a crime. And to be prosecuted for grape in this culture, you have to have 2 men witnesses that will testify that it happened. Otherwise, the woman gets punished. The UK and now America are sacrificing their wives and daughters for diversity credit. And it's not phobic to say that because that's what's happening. Every single area that has welcomed a mass migration has been objectively destroyed in Europe. Every single one. Go look for yourselves. And instead of seeing that and saying, there might be a common pattern, you just call people racist for talking about it. You took a massive culture that hates women, hates children, hates gays, hates white people, hates America, hates Western civilization, brought them into Western civilization and said, hey, maybe because now that they're on different soil, they'll change their behavior. They'll change their moral compass and their core values because they moved somewhere else. No, they're bringing it with them. And of course they are. Why wouldn't they? There have been so many studies done back in the old days before the media today buried them. But in the early 2000s, late 90s, so many studies from educational peer-reviewed places, Harvard University, Yale, all of these different spots that have some of the world's best research, right? Educational research, have done studies on mass diversity, mega diversity in communities. And it fails every time. In 2001, a study was done by a Harvard professor. He spent years on this study, hoping because he was a liberal for a good outcome that diversity worked. Come to find out, holy crap, it doesn't. People got less involved in their community when it was mega diversity. They got less involved in schooling when it was mega diversity. People weren't as quick to report crimes in diverse spaces. They didn't assimilate well at work together. They didn't assimilate well at stores together. Everything objectively failed when you tried to bring too many diverse people in the same small area. And of course, the left and the media bury these kinds of studies because they want brownie points to other cultures that they're the good one. There's nothing phobic about saying some cultures do not blend into the West. They don't. It's proven time and time again, and their behavior is that proof alone. Not only that, but again, endless amounts of studies have shown that diversity sometimes does not work because when cultures are different, so are values and so are morals. And when you try to put 2 people like that under the same roof, meaning city, state, country, it doesn't collide, it clashes. And your inability to have a difficult conversation about that is costing women and children their purity, their virginity, and their lives. Snap out of it. There's no such thing as Islamophobia. Islam does not belong here. Even Islam says, death to Western civilization. And you leftists say, come on, we love you, we're accepting, we're welcoming. It's a joke. I just hope you and your children aren't the ones having to pay the price like these women in England are. That would be a damn shame.
So I've seen people in her comment section saying this is a stereotyping of races, religions or cultures. The point of this is not to state that all people from these cultures are a certain way. I am a product of a Muslim immigrant family myself, so there are obvious variations. However, I am not the norm. All cultures exemplify trends and patterns, and if you look closely at these behaviours, you discover that they are inextricably linked to attitudes found within their religious and or secular beliefs. And if the foundation is Islam, we see fundamentally toxic attitudes. And a classic example is Islam's attitude towards women.
When things creep in subtly, although I think the wave of Islam is no longer subtle, but when it first started creeping into the West and into the UK, people would obviously be looking around, looking at more burqas and hijabs popping up. And slowly but surely, the more they see, the more it becomes the norm. And I doubt they even question, why are they wearing a full face covering? So why do Muslim women have to wear a full face covering, or even just sort of even with the face on display, but the rest of it all covered? And is it their choice predominantly to do that? Because I know that there's going to be more flexible, moderate Muslims that treat the Quran like a buffet and take little bits, and they're far more relaxed and kind of westernized. But predominantly, if we're talking about real Islam, why do women have to cover their modesty, including their face? And has a woman sort of in the grasp of Islam have any choice in the matter?
Obviously, there's various versions of how to cover yourself. If you look at the Islamic world, it differs slightly between like the Afghan niqab versus the Iranian. They call it the chador. Again, different ways of just covering themselves from their head to about their belly button. Saudi Arabia is different as well. But essentially, it all comes down to a verse in the Quran and a story in Islamic history, which had I known, and I'm sure had any Muslim woman known before they did it, they'd probably be repulsed at why it's even come about in the first place. But funnily enough, it didn't even, I just go by what the Islamic sources say, it didn't even come down initially from Muhammad himself. It was one of his companions, his right-hand man, who was quite a thug, actually. Umar ibn Khattab, he would do these like sex raids at night into neighboring like villages and stuff. And so he essentially would mistake some of the women that he would like capture to sexually harass as the Muslim women, because they would go to the fields at night to, let nature take its call, basically. So,
sex raids?
Yeah.
Raid a house, take a woman out for sex against their will?
Yes, exactly. So this man, Umar ibn Khattab, he is like a degenerate in Islamic history. And it seems from Islamic history that even at times Muhammad was afraid of him and kind of never wanted to, rile him up. So I've done a video about this as well. There's a few verses in the Quran, which again made me really question how divine is this book? And it's not at all, is because 3 of those verses that made it into the Quran were Umar ibn Khattab's wants, essentially. And he kept asking Muhammad over and over again, hey, let's get this in there. Come on now. So one night, Muhammad's wives, when they went to answer nature's call, one of his wives, Sauda, she's a very, very tall lady. And so she was in the fields, and Umar ibn Khattab was wanting to go on one of his sex raids at night. And he noticed her and he thought, okay, we need to stop. If I harassed her, she's obviously the Prophet's wife. So we need to put something in place that makes me realize, as a marker, who's open for harassment and who's not. And that's why I always bring it back to how dark the concept of the hijab, basic hijab, or like if you want to go into niqab and all that, it's even worse. But even just the hijab is actually in the Quran. It says, they don't even hide it. It says, tell your Muslim women to, bring down their outer garments over their bosoms so that they are not molested or harassed. So what does that mean? That all the women who are uncovered are free to be molested and harassed. And it goes even further, because there's stories in the Islamic sources where Umar ibn Khattab actually, he punishes a slave woman who was non-Muslim, for trying to cover herself to look like a Muslim woman so she wouldn't be harassed. And he literally uncovers her and says, you have to walk around half naked because you're not a Muslim.
Wow.
Now, does this sound like a culture that is compatible with the West? It's important to understand that humans are socially conditioned by their environment. This includes moral norms and behaviours given by the state and community, but often and most importantly, our child's parenting and family values. These factors determine behaviour on an incalculable level. In other words, free will is a scarce thing at best. On a scale of probability, if you or I were born into these cultures, there is a high chance we would also exhibit these behaviours. That's just how this works. Please look into the stats regarding assault and their relationship to nationality, religion and ethnicity by Athena, and let me know if you find any that disagree with her claims, because I have found very little. Clinging to some idealistic belief about integration and assimilation has been profoundly damaging to Western societies and their social cohesion, and I feel we are reaching a tipping point, particularly in the UK. Clearly not all cultures are the same, and social conditioning takes time, often generations, and even then it can be circumvented by draconian religious values of a previous century. Importing large amounts of people that have no inclination to integrate or respect the Western way of life is destroying the West. And yet the Western world, through either corrupt governments or blind ignorance, are being forced to discover this the hard way.